Today we're talking about one of my favorite vampire movies of all time. So down in the comments, I'd like to hear what your favorite vampire movie is. Hello, I'm Adam Caesar. This is Project Black T-Shirt, the channel where we take a new or a reissue horror movie and then pair it with a reading recommendation that you will enjoy if you like that movie. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more movie and book pairings. And if you're a horror fan, I have to mention the fact that I am an author. I've written this book, Clown in the Cornfield. It's at bookstores everywhere. It's at your Barnes & Noble. It's online. Right now you can order it and it'll probably arrive before Christmas. Beautiful hardcover. Also an audiobook and Kindle. And I've got over 10 other titles, short stories, novellas, novels, full novels, for you to go check out on Amazon, Bookshop, links down in the description, everywhere books are sold. So in writing up my notes for this video, I was struck with a problem that I haven't had in quite a number of videos, quite a number of months, maybe even a whole, probably like it's over a year ago. But the last time I had this problem was Arrow Video's Blu-ray release of Basket Case, which is a movie, I even said in the video, which is a movie that I love so much and I have so much goodwill towards that I don't even think I can look at it objectively. It's just one of my all-time favorite movies. This is a similar situation that we're in today. This is a movie that I first saw in either late middle school, early high school, whenever the first DVD of it came out, which I think was also Blue Underground. The movie just kind of blew me away. It felt a little bit forbidden. It felt super classy. It felt a little bit obscure in a narrative sense and in a formal sense, and felt like a kind of like an art movie, but also had all the things that I like in horror movies. And it just kind of, forever, it's been one of my favorite movies, and it's like in my favorite genre of movies, the vampire film. And that movie is Harry Kümel's Daughters of Darkness. Here in this, I don't even think I had the Blu-ray before this one. I only had the DVD, had that kind of gateway DVD. But this is the 4K Ultra HD lavish 3-disc edition. You get the film in 4K, you get the film in regular Blu-ray, and then you get the soundtrack CD. Soundtrack is awesome. We've talked about these. We've talked about these Blue Underground HD upgrades, these Blue Underground 4K scans they've been doing of their kind of like biggest titles, their most frequently released titles. And now it's Daughters of Darkness's turn. And for most of these, I've for the Fulci movies and for Maniac and for Zombie, I kind of paired them together and talked about them in pairs. But we're going to give Daughters of Darkness the spotlight treatment here. We're going to only talk about Daughters of Darkness today. Yeah, and maybe try to ferret out the heart of why I love this movie so much, when there are many other movies like it. There are many other movies that on the surface level share a lot of similarities and share a lot of plot similarities and some stylistic similarities, but why this one's my favorite, I don't know. So very briefly, the plot of Daughters of Darkness. They talk about it kind of on the special features that they're. I think it was Kat Ellinger's commentary. She basically talks about how before this there were 2 oft-adapted pieces of vampire fiction. There's Dracula, of course, and then there is Carmilla, the Sharon LaFanu novella about that kind of introduced the idea of the sapphic or lesbian vampire. Right before Daughters of Darkness, like a year or 2 before Daughters of Darkness, was Hammer's The Vampire Lovers, which is also based on Carmilla. And Daughters of Darkness doesn't adapt either of those. The inception of Daughters of Darkness was not only Harry Kümel's, who is a Belgian director. It's not only his kind of frustrations or distaste with the film scene in Belgium, with like the art film scene, with the fallout from the French New Wave, that he wanted to make something like very commercial in his view, or in like the French or Belgian view of things, very commercial is this movie. Combine that with the fact that he read an article about Countess Elizabeth Bathory, or Bathory, as the characters pronounce it here. But Bathory, if you don't know the legend, she was this countess who had literally like hundreds of virgin girls under her rule, tortured and killed, and then like there were rumors that she bathed in the blood to stay youthful. She was this crazy sadist So he introduced that idea that she might be a vampire, and because they had no money to do a kind of lavish Hammer style costume drama, they made a modern picture. They made a modern like, well, if the vampires are eternal, she could live in 1971, and it would be, she'd just be walking around. It'd be easier to shoot because you could do a more modern movie. And that is kind of the jumping off point for how he decided to make Daughters of Darkness. The plot is, watching it this time, I was struck by how much plot there is. When I guess my memory, my hazy kind of nostalgic memories of this movie is that it was more impressionistic and less plot-based than it actually turns out being. A newlywed couple, so newlywed that they kind of don't really know each other, it seems like. It's almost like this marriage was like super impulsive. John Carlin, who is an American TV actor from Dark Shadows, somehow ended up starring in this Belgian-French West German co-production with Canadian money in it. So John Carlin plays the husband. His newlywed wife is Quebec star Danielle Ouimet. They stop on the train and they're heading back to wherever he lives. He decides, oh, let's stay at this hotel. It's out of the way hotel that's in the off season. It's kind of on the beach, but it's meant to be the winter. So it's like it's completely dead inside. They're like kind of the only people there, them and the guy that runs the hotel. And she's kind of like impatiently like, I want to meet your mother. I want to know more about you. And he's keeping stuff from her, and we're not quite sure how. Separately, two other travelers arrive at this kind of off-season dead hotel. It's a very glamorous woman, the Countess Elizabeth Bathory. Delphine Seyrig, she was a huge French star at the time, shows up with her valet or her partner, or we're not quite sure what the relationship is. But immediately notice the only other two people at this hotel are the newlywed couple, and things escalate, and there's this weird power play that happens between the Countess and the husband and the wife, and it goes some expected places and some unexpected places. All the while, in Belgium, in Bruges, there's stories of young girls who've been violently murdered and stuff like that, and an investigator who's kind of looking for the culprit, who, you know, you can kind of probably guess who the culprit is just by that short synopsis. It sounds simple, but it is one of the most gorgeous and thrilling movies I've ever seen. And what's interesting, another thing that struck me on this viewing is how little bloodshed there is, how little traditional horror elements there are, besides a couple like vampire standards of like someone outside the window, of like the hotel room, and all this different stuff. Like there are these vampire boxes that this movie checks, and then it just goes off as like, once it checks those boxes, it's almost unconcerned with the gothic vampire tradition, and it just does its own hyper European, hyper cinema fantastique like direction, and it's so great. It's really this is one of those things where I'm just saying how great it is, and that it's a great movie, and Adam needs to use his words and describe why it's a great movie. Well, let's talk about why it's a great movie. Let's talk about the cast. John Carlin's great. He plays a real kind of charismatic, kind of like movie star handsome guy, but who's clearly a real bastard in some ways, and you're not quite sure how, and you know that he's in some way setting up or being cruel to his newlywed wife, and she's in some ways naive and is going to become less naive as the movie goes along. Delphine Seyrig, radiant, incredible. She modeled both her performance, and Kümel modeled just the way he presented her around like classic Hollywood and classic movie stars. The idea that she's a little bit out of time when she shows up at this hotel, because as the bellhop immediately notices, or he was the bellhop when he first saw her, but that was 40 years ago. She kind of hasn't aged a day since the last time she stayed at this hotel. Radiant and incredible, and it's a great performance. And the thing I noticed this viewing is how weirdly funny her performance is. It's her line reads and her toying with these characters and the way that she plays dumb in certain ways kind of cracked me up this time. I never did before. I always just thought of her as this like etheric beauty that's like so poised and so classy. But there's definitely some in her performance. There's some moments of kind of gallows humor, and kind of you get a hint of maybe how bloodthirsty and animalistic and a little bit cruel she is in the way that she jokes and the way that she positions these people and moves these people around. It's an incredible performance. Andrea Rao, classic Gothic beauty, has this very distinctive face, and you feel really bad for her. This is the viewing where I realized what a tragic character her character is. Even my initial read, or my like flawed high school read of this movie, was like, oh, it's kind of oblique whether or not they're both vampires, or whether or not. But to me, on this viewing, this is a master servant relationship, and this is like the end of a relationship where the Countess is kind of bored with Andrea Rao's character, and she almost knows that in a way, and she's seeing like the end of that relationship. And then you get to probably my favorite performer in the movie, Danielle Ouimet, which I was surprised to I mentioned the Kat Ellinger commentary. I was surprised to listen to that commentary and hear that Harry Kümel seemingly didn't want Ouimet. He didn't cast her. She kind of came along with the Canadian money that was being partially used to fund the movie, and because she was a popular actress in Quebec, the producers kind of saddled him with this actress. And there's the implication, and even in one of these special features, when you see Kümel talk about her, it's kind of in a semi disrespectful, semi what are you gonna do kind of way. I find that interesting because she's my favorite actor in the movie, and it's hard to imagine this movie without her. I think all these years later, 50 years later, he's got to admit it was a good choice. It was a good casting decision. So yeah, the cast, the cinematography, there are these incredibly delicate camera movements in this movie. The cinematography leads to my appreciation of the locations. Some exteriors for the hotel were shot at a different place, but this was mainly shot at a hotel in Brussels called the Hotel Astoria. The interiors, and it's just this beautiful European hotel. Something about this movie makes it feel like a European vacation. There's something about the fact that there's like French actors and German actors and a Belgian director and Canadian, Quebecan star mixed up with all this different European money drawn from all these different places. Something that adds up to this feeling like the ultimate Euro horror movie to me, because it has representation of so many different countries in Europe, and it happens at this beautiful hotel that clearly has some history, that's still open to this day, that has like been recently refurbished and stuff like that, and they talk about that a little bit. There's a special feature where one of the producers and Kümel visit the hotel nowadays, and they show how some stuff has changed and how a lot of stuff has stayed exactly the same. So there's that location, the cinematography, the music, which I mentioned right at the top, because it does come with a soundtrack CD. I've been listening to it. It's also on Spotify too, if you don't have a CD player. I've been listening to it like all week, kind of in prep to talk about this movie. What else? What are the other things that I love about this film? Just the story and tone and mood. I think it's a movie that works as a horror movie because it is kind of scary and at moments tragic, and tells a classic vampire story, but it does so kind of like the way it's not Dracula, it's not Carmilla, it's the Bathory story. Kind of the way it's like that. It's just adding a slight curveball to everything else that's presented. Makes this such a unique and classic film. Now let's talk about the disc itself, because I've been holding it up, I've been throwing it around. Like I said, you get 3 discs, 4K, Blu-ray, and soundtrack CD. There's also liner notes. If you are like looking at this set and you just watch the movie and then you're like, okay, well, I want kind of just the facts, or like the quickest overview of all the information about this film, I would read the liner notes by Michael Gingold. They're really, really great. He not only does like a quick chronology of the Sapphic vampire film, which helps me because I'm terrible at film chronology. I can never remember what comes before what. The most interesting part of that essay, I thought, was how he talks about how there was very, very nearly a movie called Mothers of Darkness, which would have been a decades later sequel to Daughters of Darkness, that Kümel almost got off the ground. And it sounds like it came like really, really close. And it sounds like he kind of screwed it up by being rude to someone in the Brussels Film Council. There's the commentary, the Kat Ellinger commentary, which I mentioned. She's done some incredible commentaries, but she's also uniquely suited to talk about this film because she wrote a book about it, one of those Devil's Advocates series academic books. I have a couple of them. I have like Witchfinder General, a couple other movies, but I don't have the Daughters of Darkness one. I'll have to pick it up after listening to her commentary track. That's the only new feature on here. The other two commentary tracks are holdovers from old releases. All the special features are holdovers from old releases. And you hear that and you think, well, if I have the old releases, is it really worth the upgrade for this? I would say, A, if you don't have this movie, if you haven't seen this movie, this is the best possible way to see it. B, if you have the other releases, the thing that this has over it is the new transfer. It looks amazing. It almost looks like a new movie. And I kind of was wondering as I was watching it, is this just my faulty memory? Or does this look so different, so radically different, so radically better than it used to look? And that's the first thing in the new commentary that Kat Ellinger comments on. She basically was like, well, I wrote a book about this movie and I watched it like 100 times. And I've never seen it look like this because not only is the print absolutely pristine, does the 4K look incredible on a 4K TV. If you have the capacity to watch this movie like this, this would be a great like check disc to show people how good a movie from 1971 can look. I would toss this movie in. Incredible how good it looks. But not only is the transfer good, but Kümel kind of supervised the new color timing. So the movie looks slightly different. There's there are pops of color there kind of weren't before. It really showcases the costume design and the which I keep saying costume design, and it sounds like a weird thing to mention in a horror movie. But there is a costume change kind of like every scene that you see the Countess is in this on some different gorgeous classic Hollywood gown. But everything looks incredible in this movie. The performers look incredible. The cinematography looks incredible. The hotel looks incredible. This is we're really close to the end of 2020, and there's been some really, really good releases in 2020. We talked about the Adamson set and some other choice movies that like Vinegar Syndrome and stuff have put out. Even Blue Underground themselves, I thought their Fulci 4Ks were really, really gorgeous and really special. But I think there's probably nothing this year, for me personally, that's better than this. This is an amazing set. If there is one criticism, if there's one small drawback, if there's one small asterisk to put on this review at all, is that it's pretty damn expensive. I'm sure at some point the price will drop. I'm sure there will be sales. This is an expensive set, but in my mind, it is so incredibly worth it. One of my favorite movies. The absolute definitive version of it. There's not going to be some kind of magic better than 4K version of this movie. It just legitimately doesn't seem possible. The absolutely definitive edition of one of my favorite movies. That's all I'm going to say about that, but I think I said plenty. This week's book recommendation is thematic. It's related, and I'm kind of jumping the gun on this because this is a comic book recommendation, and this comic actually doesn't. While I'm recording this video, this doesn't come out until next Wednesday. So if you go to the comic book shop asking for this, they're gonna look at you crazy, or they're going to say, "Oh, you can place a pre-order for that." Do it. Place a pre-order. Call your local comic shop. Make sure they get you a copy in. This is called The Picture of Everything Else. This is written by Dan Waters, and the art is by Kishore Mohan. We've talked a little bit about Vault Comics and how they're like, okay, as far as the indies, they seem like the one most interested in horror, the one most interested in doing original horror stories. The picture of everything else, just one issue of this is out. I've only read one issue of this, so I can't speak for the whole series. But it's so rare in comics that one issue not only feels like a complete story, not only feels like comics are getting expensive, not only feels like you got your $5 worth or whatever, however much it costs, maybe it's $4 in that 24 pages, but damn, this is a great story-packed single issue of a comic book that tells, like, it's basically a prologue. It's basically, seems like, I can't guess where the rest of the story is going, but it seems like it's almost like this standalone prologue. It's set in France. We focus on these two kind of Oscar Wilde-esque characters. One of them is like, they talk about aestheticism and all these Wildean catchphrases. And they're two artists, and they're living together, and they seem to be frustrated with their work. They're down on their luck. They seem poor because when we first meet them, they are like, they've attended a cocktail party that they weren't invited to, and they're going to steal something from it. We get shades of their jealousy of other artists that have wealthy patrons and stuff like that. And then at the same time, parallel to that, there's this story of this person in Paris, this Ripper in Paris who's killing people. These two stories combine. Like, I got to be very careful to spoil it, because I think even if you go on like Waters' Twitter and stuff like that, he's like spoiling the big reveal of the first issue. But I don't think that's the best way to read this. But those two stories, the kind of A plot and the B plot, sync up in the midpoint of this issue, and it's what seems like it's going to be kind of a delicate, kind of classy, highfalutin horror story, gets a little bit of like supernatural body horror, supernatural gore added to it, and Mohan's art is beautiful and has this kind of watercolor look to it. And it's just a really shocking panel when this thing happens, when these two stories kind of combine. Well worth reading. The picture of everything else, it's supposed to like kind of remind you of the picture of Dorian Gray, and there is something with art, or, you know, an artist interacting with the world in a supernatural way. Like, there's a connection there. So it makes you think it's gonna be like a wild pastiche, or a riff on the picture of Dorian Gray, but it's not. The conceit, at least in the first issue, is not that at all. But it is set in that world, and it does feel very European. But it's great. The dialogue is great. The characters are great. The art is amazing. I'm really excited to see what issue 2, 3, 4. I don't know if it's a miniseries or an ongoing. I would imagine it's a miniseries, but I'm excited to see how it goes from here, because it kind of does seem to tell such a complete and self-contained story that it could go in a number of different directions with these characters. But yeah, I got an early copy of it. I'm not in any way shilling for them. I don't know these. I don't know the writers. I don't know the artists. I got sent one from the publisher. But it's yeah. I just thought it was great. I've been reading a bunch of Vault titles. I've been reading the plot. Their Vampire the Masquerade thing. I read The Secret Service, which is a great James Bond meets Hellboy riff. Yeah, they've been just consistently putting out good horror comics, so I really appreciate that. And this is maybe their best single issue so far, so I would highly recommend that you put this on your pull list and grab this issue. That's that. That was a long episode. A lot of love in this episode. Time's running out to get the perfect gift for people in your life that love slashers and love horror. Clown in the Cornfield. Go grab a copy, hardcover, ebook, audiobook, have it beamed right to your loved one. And as we near the holidays, I have to really thank you to my subscribers and to my readers and to everyone who's checked out a book and to everyone who's recommended a book to their friends. Thank you so much. Not to put too fine a point on it, but this book's really changed my life. And I'm so grateful. Like, subscribe, watch my other videos, comment down below what your favorite vampire movie, and let's have a great week, guys. I will see you next week.